Internet. I'm Shannon, and tonight I've got another book talk video to share with you. And tonight we are talking about The Heights by Louise Candlish. Now, this book I first picked up because it had some blurbs from 3 authors that I really enjoy. We got Ruth Ware here on the cover, and on the back we've got Lisa Jewell and B.A. Paris, and they all sang her praises, so I was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's do it. So this book, when I first picked it up, the first couple of days I read a few pages here and there, and then I hit around the 60-page mark, and that was it. I was done for. I couldn't put it down. Today, even when I was out running errands, I brought it with me in the car just in case I had wait times anywhere, even though I was the driver. So it was a page turner, that's for absolute sure. I didn't know a whole bunch going into this. I knew that it was about a woman who is taken aback when she sees from a distance one night a man who she had presumed was dead. And the reason she had presumed that was because she was the person responsible for having him killed. And so that sort of sets off the chain of events that is The Heights. So at first, when I just sort of read that blurb, I kind of thought, okay, it's going to be like a lover's thing, a lover's spat, lover's quarrel, something like that. But it's actually much more complicated than that, and actually has to do with her son. So let's get on into it. I'll give you sort of a brief synopsis before I get into any kind of spoilers, and I'll give you fair warning so you can exit this video. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. So aside from what I just told you, from there we get flashbacks. First of all, the way that it's written is it cuts back and forth between a magazine article or newspaper article that's being written about our main character / her book, and then chapters from the book as well. Later on into the book, it switches to a different point of view, which is the point of view of Ellen, our main character's ex-husband, but that doesn't come until a good way in. So we're getting flashbacks to when Ellen was a mom of 2. Her and her current husband, Justin, they live in a nice home. They've got a teenage son named Lucas and a younger, like 11 or 12-year-old daughter named Freya. So Lucas is Ellen's son with her first husband, Vic, and then Freya is the son that, or the daughter that she has with her current husband, Justin. So we get these flashback scenes of Lucas meeting a new friend at school, and he's kind of thrown together with his friend. He's assigned to him because this kid is new, and they become fast friends. They bond really quickly. But unfortunately for literally everybody involved, as their friendship begins to grow, Ellen really feels and starts to notice that this new kid, Kieran, is having a really bad effect on her son. He's a bad influence. Her son, who was always really studious and kind of serious and didn't really get into any trouble, is now getting into all kinds of trouble. Just basically all the types of teenage trouble you can think of. Drinking, drugs, the whole bit, skipping school, staying out too late, not studying anymore, starting to fail his classes when he has never failed his classes before. And Ellen starts to get really concerned about the influence that this new kid is having on her son. So as time goes on, we begin to piece together that her son has passed away. Like, we learn this quite early on. This isn't a spoiler. We learn it very early on. Her son has passed away, and this new kid is the cause of that death. We don't know how till much later. And the whole time you're reading it, you kind of have this just feeling of dread, this pit in your stomach. Because as we're learning all these things about Justin and Lucas, and the thing that happens with him and this new kid, you know the whole time that this is going to end in tragedy for her son. And so every time he makes a bad decision and we see it in your inside, you're like, don't do it. You think maybe it won't happen, but of course it does. And from there, the story turns to a mother's quest for revenge, even though how her son is killed is an accident. She becomes obsessed with this kid, Kieran, who lived through the accident and her son didn't. She blames him entirely. Even though he does get a small prison sentence, she is determined that that is not enough, and she won't rest until he has been handed what she thinks is enough. Which then, just from what we know from the blurb, she has a hand in his death. And so that's what we think we know as we're going through it. So I'm not going to get into any spoilers now. Well, I am, but if you don't want them, you click on out. It was good. It kept me guessing the whole time. There are a few twists sort of planted within, which I liked. The twists aren't saved for the end. There's twists scattered throughout, and I liked that a lot. For me personally, I saw a lot of them coming, especially one sort of in the middle that involves her ex-husband Vic. I saw that coming. As soon as it started building up to it, I just yelled it out. I knew that was going to happen. But I feel like that's because I read so many thrillers that now my brain knows to start churning and coming up with the craziest things I can think of. So I wouldn't blame that on the author. I think many people probably won't guess it, maybe. I don't know. The twist that comes at the end, I kind of thought I thought there was going to be a bigger, more sinister twist, and there just wasn't. That said, I liked how it ended. So yeah, if you like a thriller that you can't put down once you get going, that will keep you guessing, even if the things you're guessing are crazier than what actually happens, I would definitely recommend. She's an author I would definitely check out again. All right. So if you don't want spoilers, now's the time to get going. So if you're staying for the spoilers, then you probably want to know how it all came to be that Ellen thought she had this kid killed, but now she's seeing him and he's alive. So back after Kieran, the boy who was driving the car in the accident that killed her son, is released from prison, and after his 3-month post-prison probation is over with, she goes to her ex-husband and tells him that she can't live knowing this kid is out there. She can't. Even though technically what happened was an accident, she just gets such bad vibes from this kid. She's obsessed with getting him gone. So her and her ex-husband sort of devise a plan where they're going to hire somebody to kill this kid. Now I'm saying kid, at this point he's an adult, of course. And he might have even been like 18 when it happened. They were older teenagers, Lucas and Kieran. So they decide they're going to hire someone to kill him. And so she's like, I'll supply the money. You figure out the contact with your cousin. So he tells her that he's done that. And she gives him the money. And he's like, it's taken care of. A few days or a few weeks later, finally he shows up on the missing persons website. And she's like, great, he's gone. Perfect. But what we find out toward the end is that Vic couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He didn't carry the same sort of hate and rage in his heart that Ellen did. And instead of taking that money and hiring a contract killer, what he did was he went to Kieran and he told him that he had heard through the grapevine that there was someone trying to harm him and that he needed to leave town and never ever return. So he gives this kid the money that his wife had given him to hire the killer. And he tells him, you take this money and you go and you never return. Now for a while, he did go to Scotland. This book takes place in England, like in the London area. So Kieran goes to Scotland for a while, but then eventually he comes back and he's living in a high-rise apartment building Which works out because throughout the book we keep getting these hints that Ellen is deathly afraid of heights, and I kept thinking this is going to come up later. How is this going to come up? So he's living up high in this apartment. He's pretty much a hermit. He's managed to build a successful business for himself based on an app he created that he sold. And he just keeps to himself. But she just so happened to catch sight of him one day. And so she's in a frenzy. She's like, how can this be? We killed him. So Vic plays stupid. He's like, well, I don't know. We killed him. I don't know. But eventually it all comes bubbling to the surface. The truth gets out, as it often does. And so that was the twist that I saw coming, that Vic had been the one to tip him off that someone was after him and not hire the killer. But I thought that he had kept the money for himself, but it was revealed that he gave it to Kieran to go start a life with it. It was $15,000, you know, a lot, especially for a young guy just going to start a life. So what happens from there is just a lot of chaos. Ellen becomes consumed again with hurting this man. And Vic doesn't really want anything to do with it. He's kind of like, listen, it's been 5 years now. We need to move on with our lives. Like, it was an accident. He went to prison. Like, we need to move on. They were kids when it happened. You have to leave this guy alone. She can't. She cannot. So she kind of just starts stalking him around town. And eventually they come face to face. He's like, listen, you need to leave me alone. I can't get caught up in you. You have to get away from me. And then a bunch of things happen, like a lot. It starts moving pretty quickly here. And Ellen decides she's going to get a gun. She's going to go to his place on the anniversary of Lucas's death. She's going to threaten him. She's going to kill him. And so as we're reading the last chapter of her book, that's what happens. She says that Kieran tells her, you know what? You don't need your gun. Come push me off the balcony if you dare. And she does, or so we thought. So the final twist here is that it was actually Vic. Vic had followed her that night because he knew something was wrong. He knew, because he had run into her earlier in the night when she was leaving her home and heading to a Christmas party, which she did make an appearance at, but then she also went to Kieran's that night, and Vic had followed her. So it's all three of them up on the balcony. When the push happens, the push does happen, but it's all three of them up on the balcony. And Kieran's decided, since he knows this is probably not going to end well for him, he's going to tell the truth about what happened that night. So we learn that Kieran had been dating Lucas's girlfriend. She had broken up with Lucas like the night before the accident, or the week before the accident. And the night they were driving, it was actually Lucas who was driving, despite the fact that he didn't have a driver's license. So they're driving, they get into the accident. While they were driving, they were talking to Jade, Lucas's ex-girlfriend, and Kieran's current girlfriend on the phone. And there was a fight, an argument between the two men. And Lucas drives the car off the road. And so what had always bothered Ellen the most was that while Kieran had managed to get himself out of the car into safety, he hadn't gone back to try to save Lucas. And there had been excuses made by the police and the lawyers and Kieran himself that it was impossible. He had a broken shoulder. He was injured. It was pitch black, the night and the water, everything was dark. And that he couldn't get back, but that didn't sit right with her. She was like, you had your phone, you could have called 911. He didn't even do that. And then eventually, in kind of this fit of clarity or whatever he's going through on the balcony, he tells her, you know what? Once I got myself out of that water, I thought about going back, but then I decided I'm not going to. So Kieran tries to spin the narrative that Lucas was the bad kid the whole time, not him. And he's like, you know, I thought me and Jade, the girlfriend, would be better off without him. And it's Vic then who, in a fit, just hearing that confession of leaving his friend to die, causes him to push that kid right over the balcony, as you would. So that's the true ending, not the ending we got from her book that it was her. And so what we've learned throughout the story as well is that Vic now has a new family. He's got a new partner and they're expecting a child together. So she's like, listen, get out of here. Vic's like, no, 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 you get out of here. I did this. She's like, get out of here. You have a new family to focus on. Run. And then the very last line of the book is Vic running. So there you go, you guys. That is the end of The Heights by Louise Candlish. Like I said, I enjoyed it. And when I read a thriller and I can predict the ending, that doesn't really ruin it for me. I just extra appreciate when I can't guess it. But I enjoyed this a lot. It kept me turning the pages. Couldn't put it down. Would recommend. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a good day and I will see you again real soon. Bye.